You want to know how the galaxy learned to fear humanity? Fine. I will tell you. But do not expect comfort in this tale, because there is none to be found. My name is Vorthan Kleiss, and I served as intelligence officer aboard the Sovereignty warship Eternal Dominion. That designation meant something back then. It meant power. It meant authority. It meant we owned the stars and everything cowering beneath them. The humans? Oh, we knew about them. Sort of. They were file reference 7208 in our expansion database. Primitive. Barely spacefaring. Still fighting each other over frozen water and combustible liquids. The preliminary scan teams reported back with data so underwhelming that Command nearly deleted the entire file. They have nuclear weapons, one analyst noted during the briefing. His gill flaps twitched with what I now recognize as suppressed laughter. They point them at each other. The room erupted. Can you imagine? A species so backward, so fundamentally stupid, that they would aim extinction-level devices at their own population centers. We found it hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Supreme Commander Zala, may her scales rot in the void, made the final assessment. Minimal value for assimilation. Consider for resource extraction only. Sentient rights protocol, suspended. That was it. Humanity's death warrant, signed with bureaucratic efficiency. We would take their world, catalog their artifacts, and process the survivors into labor stock. Standard procedure. We had done it 47 times before. I wish I could tell you we hesitated. That someone, anyone, raised concerns. But why would we? The humans had barely colonized their own moon. Their fastest ships needed decades to reach their neighboring planets. They were insects playing with fire, and we were gods descending from the heavens. The invasion fleet assembled in the Oort cloud of their system. 12 dreadnoughts. 48 cruisers. 216 support vessels. Enough firepower to crack a planet's crust or blockade an entire star system. We ran final diagnostics, checked our translation matrices, and prepared the standard surrender broadcast. That broadcast, for context, had never failed. Not once in sovereignty history. We would demonstrate overwhelming force, demand submission, and the target species would capitulate. They always did. Mathematics did not lie. Neither did plasma cannons that could boil oceans. Commander Zala activated the transmission herself, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 conquered worlds. Attention primitive inhabitants of Sol 3. You are hereby notified that your system falls under sovereignty jurisdiction. Resistance is illogical and will result in total extinction. You have 6 of your planetary rotations to surrender unconditionally. Acknowledge compliance immediately. We waited. Standard protocol suggested a response within 3 hours. Fear worked quickly on most species. They would see our ships, understand the mathematics of their situation, and accept the inevitable. 6 hours passed. Nothing. 12 hours. Still nothing. Perhaps their communication technology is more limited than we assessed, suggested Junior Officer Relix. Should we deploy closer and repeat? Zala's crest flared purple, a sign of irritation. Do it. And broadcast on all frequencies. I want every electronic device on that mudball screaming our message. We moved the fleet to the outer planets. Jupiter, they called it. A useless gas giant that served as an adequate demonstration platform. We fired a single precision shot at one of its moons, a frozen rock called Europa. The beam punched through the ice crust and superheated the subsurface ocean. The resulting explosion was visible from Earth itself, a new star briefly igniting in their night sky. Now, Zala said, satisfaction oozing through her words. Now they understand. The response came 14 hours later. Not from their governments. Not from their military. From a single individual whose transmission bypassed every protocol and appeared directly on our command frequency. A human female, middle-aged by their standards, wearing some kind of formal attire. She sat behind a wooden desk, of all things. Wood. Like she was conducting business in a museum. Her hair was pulled back severely, and her eyes, those unsettling forward-facing predator eyes, stared directly into the camera. This is Director Katerina Volkov of the United Earth Defense Initiative. Her voice was calm. Too calm. We received your message. We have a response. She leaned forward slightly, and I swear by the eternal void, she smiled. Not a friendly smile. The smile of something that has just heard the punchline to a joke you do not yet understand. No. That was it. One word. Then the transmission ended. The command deck fell silent. No one knew how to process what we had just witnessed. A primitive species, facing obliteration, had responded to our ultimatum with a single syllable of defiance. Insanity, Zala hissed. They choose extinction. Very well. Prepare bombardment formation. Target their major population centers first. Make it quick but visible. The survivors need to understand the cost of defiance. The fleet moved into position. Earth hung before us like a ripe fruit, blue and white and completely undefended. No orbital platforms. No particle nets. No defensive satellites worth mentioning. A few primitive space stations that barely qualified as structures. All batteries charged, reported Weapons Officer Dren. Awaiting authorization to fire. Zala opened her mouth to give the order. That is when their ships appeared. Not gradually. Not with the standard displacement signatures we had learned to recognize over 1,000 years of warfare. One moment, empty space. The next moment, vessels. Dozens of them, materializing within our formation like ghosts achieving sudden substance. Impossible, someone shouted. They do not have translation drive technology. The scans confirmed it. The human ships were ugly. Let me be clear about that. They looked like someone had taken industrial equipment, welded weapons to it, and decided aesthetics were negotiable. Asymmetrical. Patchwork. Some showed obvious repair scars. They violated every principle of elegant engineering. But they were there. Inside our formation. And they were accelerating. Evasive maneuvers. Zala screamed, her composure shattering. Return fire. All batteries, engage at will. We fired. Emperor's truth, we fired everything. Plasma lances that could vaporize asteroids. Missile swarms that could overwhelm any point defense. Energy beams that had cleaved dreadnoughts in half. The human ships dodged. Not perfectly. We scored hits. I watched one of their cruisers take a direct plasma strike that should have split it open like overripe fruit. The ship shuddered, vented atmosphere from a dozen breaches, and kept coming. Kept firing. Their weapons were primitive. Kinetic accelerators, mostly. Chunks of metal propelled at relativistic speeds. We had abandoned such crude technology centuries ago. Why use bullets when you have directed energy? Because bullets work. That is why. The first human salvo hit the dreadnought Infinite Justice. The kinetic rounds punched through shields like they were not even active, hammered into the armor plating, and kept going. Deep. So deep. I watched the impact telemetry in horror as those stupid metal slugs burrowed through 17 decks before finally stopping. Then they exploded. Not immediately. Oh no. That would have been merciful. They waited 3 seconds, buried in the ship's infrastructure, giving the crew time to realize what was about to happen. Then they detonated with force that suggested someone had violated every treaty about weapons development we had ever written. Infinite Justice broke apart. 17,000 crew. Gone. Just like that. They are using nuclear-tipped kinetic penetrators, the sensor officer shrieked. That is a war crime. That violates the Halborn Conventions. They never signed the Halborn Conventions, you idiot. I shouted back. They do not even know the Halborn Conventions exist. The human fleet tore through our formation like predators among prey. Their targeting was precise. They ignored the dreadnought's main batteries and went for our engines. Our sensors. Our communication arrays. They were not trying to destroy us. Not yet. They were crippling us. Making us helpless. Making us watch. Commander Zala was screaming orders that no one could execute. Half our fleet was tumbling out of control. The other half was trying desperately to retreat, but the humans had positioned themselves perfectly. Every escape vector was covered. They had planned this. Planned it with the kind of tactical precision that spoke of experience we had not credited them with. Then the communication channels opened again. All of them. Every frequency. The same message broadcasting from every human ship simultaneously. It was the same woman. Director Volkov. Still sitting at her wooden desk. Still wearing that smile. Sovereignty Fleet, she said pleasantly, like she was discussing weather patterns. You fired on our system. You destroyed one of our moons. You threatened our families, our children, our civilization. Did you think we would simply accept extinction? She stood up, walked around the desk, and the camera followed her. Behind her, I could see a window. Through that window, Earth. Beautiful, terrible Earth, rotating peacefully. Let me tell you something about humanity, Volkov continued. We are not logical. We do not surrender when mathematics says we should. We have fought wars that lasted generations over pieces of land smaller than your smallest ships. We have burned our own cities rather than hand them to enemies. We have stared into the abyss of nuclear annihilation and decided maybe, just maybe, we would rather die than kneel. She picked up something from off-screen. A primitive projectile weapon. A pistol, I think they call it. You expected fear. You expected submission. But you made a critical miscalculation. She chambered around in the weapon with a sound that somehow transmitted perfectly across the void. You forgot to check whether we had anything left to lose. The screen split. Dozens of feeds. Human ships throughout our formation. And on each feed, a different human, wearing different uniforms, speaking different languages, but all saying the same thing. Fire. What happened next was not a battle. It was a lesson. A brutal, efficient demonstration of exactly how much damage a primitive species could inflict when properly motivated. The humans had nuclear weapons. Yes. But they also had things we had never seen. Weapons we had not imagined. Beam projectors that somehow destabilized our shields from the inside. Missiles that ignored countermeasures by using purely optical guidance systems. Boarding pods that attached to hulls and burned through with chemical reactions so violently exothermic that our sensors could not track the temperature. And guns. So many guns. Humans loved guns. Our few remaining functional ships attempted organized retreat. The humans let us. Watched us scramble for translation distance. Let us think we might escape. Then they activated whatever impossible technology had let them appear in our formation, and they were there again, ahead of us, weapons hot. One more thing, Volkov's voice crackled across our dying communication grid. We have known about you for 7 years. Did you think we were stupid? That we would miss survey drones in our system? We saw you watching us. So we let you see exactly what you expected to see. My blood froze. 7 years. They had known. Everything we had seen, every assessment we had made, had been deliberately fed to us. You saw primitive weapons, she continued. Because we showed you primitive weapons. You saw fractured governments. Because we showed you fractured governments. You saw a species barely capable of spaceflight. Because that is exactly what we wanted you to see. Zala was whimpering now. Actually whimpering. Our mighty commander, reduced to incoherent terror. So here is what happens next, Volkov said. You will return to sovereignty space. Those of you still capable of flight. You will tell them what happened here. You will tell them humanity says no. And if they send another fleet, we will teach them the same lesson. She leaned closer to the camera, her expression hardening into something that would haunt my sleep cycles for years. We are primitive. We are violent. We are irrational. And we have been preparing for war with someone, anyone, for our entire existence. You should have left us alone. The transmission ended. The human ships disengaged, allowing our shattered fleet to limp away. 18 ships remained functional out of 276. Casualties exceeded 90,000. We ran. We ran like frightened younglings, and the humans let us go. That was 3 years ago. The sovereignty has not returned to Sol system. Humanity has been classified as priority threat level maximum. Their space is marked as forbidden territory. And sometimes, late in my rest cycle, I still see Director Volkov's smile and wonder what other surprises they have waiting. What other fears they are preparing to teach. The debriefing lasted 6 days. 6 days of testimony, analysis, and escalating panic as the full scope of our failure became apparent to Sovereignty Command. They stripped Zala of her rank within the first hour. By day 3, she had been removed to a medical facility for psychological evaluation. Last I heard, she sits in a corner, muttering about wooden desks and human smiles. I envy her madness sometimes. At least she does not have to remember clearly. High Chancellor Vren presided over the inquiry himself. That should tell you everything about how seriously the sovereignty took this disaster. Vren had not personally attended a military briefing in 40 years. He materialized via holographic projection, his ancient form flickering above the central platform, and fixed us survivors with eyes that had witnessed the conquest of 17 systems. Explain, he said, how a species that still uses chemical propulsion for atmospheric flight destroyed the most advanced battle fleet ever assembled. Nobody wanted to answer. We all stared at our data tablets like they might provide salvation. Finally, I stood. Someone had to speak, and cowardice would not undo what had happened. They lied, Chancellor. Systematically. Deliberately. For 7 years. Vren's head tilted, a gesture of either curiosity or contempt. With him, they looked identical. Species do not maintain deception for 7 years. The resource expenditure alone would cripple their economy. Respectfully, Chancellor, that assumes human economy functions like ours. I pulled up the analysis files, projecting them for the assembled officers. They do not have a unified resource distribution system. They have competing economic frameworks that actively fight each other. This creates redundancy. Massive, inefficient, absurd redundancy. Elaborate. I took a breath. While we watched their public military capabilities, 3 separate human nation-states were independently developing translation drive technology. They were not sharing information. They were competing. When one achieved breakthrough, the others had parallel programs within months. Not through espionage. Through sheer parallel development. The room murmured. Such waste. Such impossible, illogical waste. Furthermore, I continued, their weapons development does not follow rational patterns. They do not optimize. They iterate. They build 17 different solutions to the same problem, test all 17 simultaneously, and implement whichever works best. Then they keep the other 16 designs just in case. That is insane, someone muttered. Yes, I agreed. It is also terrifyingly effective. Because when we planned counters for their known weapons, they deployed the unknown variants. Things they had built and shelved years ago, waiting for a situation where they might prove useful. Vren's image flickered with what might have been frustration. Their information control. How did they maintain such comprehensive deception? That question had haunted me for months. I had found the answer by studying human history, and I wish I had not. They practice deception on themselves, Chancellor. Constantly. They call it entertainment, politics, advertising, warfare, diplomacy. Humans spend significant portions of their lives deliberately misleading other humans for purposes ranging from survival to profit to simple amusement. They have been training for intelligence warfare since before they developed agriculture. I pulled up intercepted human transmissions. Advertisements showing products that did not exist. Political speeches promising outcomes the speakers knew were impossible. Entertainment programs depicting fictional events with production values rivaling actual documentation. Religious texts making claims that contradicted observable reality but were believed by billions anyway. They do not have one truth, I explained. They have multiple simultaneous truths that contradict each other, and they navigate between them fluidly. When we analyzed their capability, we looked for the singular truth. But there was no singular truth. Just carefully constructed lies layered over more carefully constructed lies, all sitting on top of capability they had deliberately hidden. Vren was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried an edge I had never heard before. Fear. Actual fear. What are they doing now? Expanding, Chancellor. Aggressively. They have established outposts in 7 systems bordering their territory. Not colonies. Military installations. They are fortifying. I switched displays, showing reconnaissance data. They are also transmitting. Constantly. Broadcasting messages in every language we know and several we do not. What do the messages say? I had memorized them. We all had. They repeated in my dreams. Stay away. This is your only warning. We did not want this fight, but we will finish it. Threats, Vren said dismissively. Standard posturing. No, Chancellor. Promises. Humans differentiate between threats and promises. Threats are negotiable. Promises are not. More data. Intelligence reports flooding in from across sovereignty space. Other species had noticed humanity's sudden appearance on the galactic stage. Some were curious. Some were offering diplomatic contact. Most were wisely maintaining distance. But one species had not learned. The Korvax hive, arrogant as always, had sent exploratory vessels into human space. 3 ships. Armed only for self-defense, allegedly seeking peaceful contact. The humans had returned them. Eventually. After dismantling every weapon system, every sensor array, every piece of technology more advanced than a light bulb. They had left the life support and engines functional. Barely. Just enough to limp home. Attached to each ship's hull, welded directly to the armor plating, was a message in perfect Korvax script. Next time, we keep the ships. The Korvax had filed a formal protest with the Galactic Council. The Council had filed it under matters requiring no action. Nobody wanted to challenge the species that had shattered the sovereignty. What is your assessment, Officer Kleiss? Vren asked. Your professional analysis of human capability and intent. I had prepared for this question. Hoped I would not have to answer it. But orders were orders. Humanity is a predator species that evolved by hunting other predators. They are persistence hunters, capable of pursuing prey across impossible distances for impossible durations. They do not give up. Biologically, psychologically, culturally, they are incapable of giving up. I pulled up biological data. Their bodies produce combat stimulants naturally. Adrenaline. Norepinephrine. Chemicals that increase strength, speed, pain tolerance, and aggression. They can temporarily ignore injuries that would incapacitate us. I watched recordings of human soldiers continuing to fight with wounds that should have killed them instantly. Medical Officer Thras interrupted. That violates basic biological principles. Pain exists as a warning system. Ignoring it leads to death. Yes, I said. Humans know this. They ignore it anyway. They have cultural concepts glorifying death in combat. Martyrdom. Sacrifice. Last stands. They tell stories about individuals who died fighting and consider them heroes. They teach these stories to their children. The horror on Thras's face reflected what everyone was thinking. A species that taught its young to embrace death in combat. What madness was this? Intent, Vren prompted. What do they want? To be left alone, Chancellor. That is all. They have no interest in sovereignty space, no territorial ambitions beyond their immediate region, no desire for galactic politics. They want to develop at their own pace, in their own way, without interference. And if we refuse? If the sovereignty decides their existence represents a threat? I met Vren's holographic gaze directly. Then we will lose, Chancellor. Badly. Because humans have one more advantage we do not possess. Which is experience. Chancellor, humans have been fighting wars continuously for their entire recorded history. Not occasional conflicts. Constant warfare. They have never, not once, achieved planetary peace for longer than a few decades. They have refined warfare into an art form, a science, and a cultural institution. We have military theory. They have 5,000 years of practical application. I displayed the final piece of evidence. Human military history. The wars. The endless, brutal, creative wars. They had fought with sticks and stones. With swords and spears. With guns and tanks and aircraft. With nuclear weapons aimed at themselves. And now, with technology that made our advantages meaningless. They do not fight wars to win territory or resources, I explained. They fight wars to prove points. To avenge insults. To defend abstract concepts. They have fought wars lasting centuries over religious interpretations. They have burned entire continents over economic disagreements. They have nearly sterilized their own planet 3 times that we know of, and they still did not stop fighting. The room had gone completely silent. Every officer present understood what I was saying. If we go to war with humanity, I concluded, they will not fight to win. They will fight until we are broken, until we surrender unconditionally, until we beg for mercy. And then they might keep fighting anyway, because they are very good at holding grudges. Vren's image flickered. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of a decision I suspect he had already made. The sovereignty will avoid human space. We will establish exclusion zones. We will reclassify them from resource target to neutral entity. We will not provoke further conflict. Someone had to ask. Junior Analyst Prell, braver or more foolish than the rest of us? Chancellor, what if they provoke us? What if they expand into sovereignty territory? Then we will negotiate. We will compromise. We will give them whatever they demand. Vren's hologram began to fade. Because the alternative is extinction, and the sovereignty chooses survival. The debriefing ended. We dispersed to our new assignments, those of us lucky enough to receive them. Most of the survivors were reassigned to administrative positions far from anything resembling combat. The sovereignty did not want officers who had faced humanity anywhere near active duty. We knew too much. We had seen too much. I currently work in the historical archives, documenting the disaster for future generations. It is quiet work. Safe. Boring. I should be grateful. But sometimes I access the communication intercepts. The human transmissions we continue monitoring from a safe distance. And I see things that terrify me more than the battle did. Humans are building. Not military installations, though they are doing that too. They are building art. Music. Literature. They are composing symphonies and writing poetry and creating sculptures. In the middle of their military expansion, they are making beauty. Because apparently, they do both simultaneously. They prepare for war while celebrating peace. They develop weapons of extinction while composing love songs. They are contradictions embodied in flesh, and I do not understand them at all. Director Volkov retired last year, according to our intelligence. She gave a speech at her retirement ceremony. It was broadcast publicly, and of course we intercepted it. We did not want to be warriors, she said. We wanted to explore. To learn. To make friends among the stars. But the galaxy showed us its teeth first, so we showed ours back. Maybe someday, when we are certain no one else will try to destroy us, we can be the species we wanted to be. Until then, we will be the species we need to be. The speech ended with her saluting the camera. Not a formal military salute. Something casual. Almost friendly. Like she was saying goodbye to an acquaintance rather than addressing potential enemies across light years. That haunts me most of all. The casualness. The lack of hatred. Humans do not hate us for attacking them. They simply adjusted their behavior to accommodate our violence and moved on. Like we were a minor problem they had solved and filed away. We called them primitive. We mocked their weapons, their fractured governments, their illogical conflicts. We saw weakness where there was only patience. We saw chaos where there was only complexity. They did not teach us respect. They taught us fear. And fear, I have learned, is a far more effective teacher. The sovereignty will not return to Sol system. Not in my lifetime. Possibly not ever. Humanity is expanding slowly, carefully, establishing their territory and defending their boundaries with the same brutal efficiency they showed us. Other species are making contact. Some successfully. The Mrendari established diplomatic relations last month. Trade agreements followed. Apparently, humans are willing to be friendly with those who approach peacefully. But the message is clear. Come in peace, or do not come at all. Because humanity has shown the galaxy exactly what they become when threatened. And none of us, not the sovereignty, not the Korvax, not any of the elder races, ever want to see that again. I finish this report with a final observation. A warning for whatever species might encounter humanity in the centuries ahead. They are not the strongest. They are not the smartest. They are not the most technologically advanced. But they are the most dangerous. Because they do not fear death, they do not fear pain, and they absolutely do not fear you. We called them primitive. We were wrong. They were just waiting. Watching. Learning. And when we came to teach them their place in the galaxy, they taught us ours instead. At the bottom. Looking up at them. Hoping they never decide to come down.